Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joined today, he's the CEO and founder of the Sleep Consultant, CEO and founder of Biotech Copy, and entrepreneur. It's Riley Jarvis. How you doing today, Riley?
Doing excellent. Thank you, Alex. And how are you?
Doing good. We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up.
So when I was a kid, it was an interesting one. I moved around a lot as a kid. And the reason was because my dad was in the hotel industry and he was kind of a manager within hotels. And kind of the rule, at least back then, was they only stay in a position for like 2 to 4 years before they move on. Even if they're doing really well, they just always want a new rotation. It's like a term in office, right? They just want like new experience and everything else. Not the one person to stay in one for a while. So because of that, I was originally born in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And then I moved to Calgary, back to Vancouver, to London, Ontario, then to Ottawa for almost, 20, 25 years, I would say. We moved, I think it was in 97. So yeah, it was a lot of time in Ottawa, the capital. A little bit of a sleepy town. It's good to visit, but at the same time to live there, but at the same time, you're a 2-hour drive away from Montreal and you're a 4-hour drive away from Toronto. So if you want to escape to the excitement, you can, which I did. I would go to a lot of concerts and I was a big music junkie back in the day, still kind of am to an extent. But yeah, that's kind of what I did. So as a kid, because of that, I was just traveling, making new friends, having to adapt to new schools, through elementary school, through high school. And so it was just because of that change, it was a lot of adaptation at once. And I'm the oldest of 4 brothers, 3 younger brothers. So I kind of had to lead the way and show by example sometimes, which was good in some ways, but not great in others when, I would go to a house party and, maybe drink too much. And it wasn't good for my brothers to figure out at the time. But, sort of since then, we all need those experiences. And then you never want to do it again.
During the time traveling to all those places, do you
Yeah.
have like a memory that sticks out, like a fun time going to a certain spot and kind of just enjoying that environment?
Absolutely. So when I was it's kind of like those random memories you have when you're a kid. And the one that I had was when I was 4 years old, living in Calgary, and in there they have something known as the Calgary Stampede. And this is where it's kind of like a cowboy kind of thing. It's sort of a festival that goes on for about a week's time. They'll do like professional, uh, like playing like they're doing a showdown, like a Wild Wild West style and all that kind of thing. So it's been going on for years, which is amazing. And I remember just being there, having cotton candy. And then I think it was in that same trick. We went to the theme park, I think in the Edmonton Mall. It's the biggest mall in Canada. And they have a, theme park inside of there too. So I remember just being so happy, no worries, no obligations. Parents were there for me, anything I wanted. And then, age of 4, that was kind of the one that really stood out to me. And, the rest of my childhood is a little bit of a blank. I remember just a second one quickly was when I was living in Vancouver. My parents didn't have a lot of money. We lived in a two-story house. And because of that, we would get a lot of immigrant students from Korea and Japan to come. And I guess the government would pay my parents so they could stay there and everything else like that because they needed the money. So it was really cool. Like they would make us dinner and, the Japanese and the Koreans, they're so friendly and they're so polite and they really just want to please in whatever way possible. So I do have, long-term memories back then of them being very nice and everything like that, just being very clean and everything. I think just because of that exposed me to this international thing very quickly. Not as much as some people who have parents who are diplomats and they travel around the world, but I feel like I got my fair share.
You talked about how you were the oldest of your brothers and kind of leading by example. Did that feel like a lot of pressure to you that you had to kind of be perfect? Because if they follow in your footsteps in the way that you were, that it kind of could be a domino effect and kind of have a bad upbringing in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it was. My dad was, because he was a manager, he was kind of like that type A alpha personality, always the go-getter, always pushing us to get like really good grades, competitive sports, just that whole shebang. Because I was the oldest, I set the example, and I feel like he was probably the hardest on me compared to everybody else. So I remember back then just becoming very stressed because, I was trying to be perfect, but at the same time, you wanted to relax and have fun with friends at the same time.
Yeah.
So I was definitely worried, I think, in the background. Just I really cared about my brothers, didn't want them to see me in a negative light, or just do something themselves in a negative light. Because, kids at that age are really innocent. If you get involved with a bad crowd, whether you know it or not, you can go downhill pretty fast, and to recover from that, it can be quite a stretch, like even a decade sometimes. So I think I mean, thank God now, like we all turned out pretty good. We all have a pretty good head on our shoulders, whether it was me or my parents or, their friends, combination of everything, who knows? But yeah, it's a good place now.
Especially so true nowadays, especially with technology and social media, getting those
Yeah.
kids at that age, even the high school
Yeah.
days, where if they start at the young age, partying, drugs, alcohol,
Yeah.
it kind of just, you don't know what path they're going to take, because they're going to
That's
take
right.
that same mentality into college, or
Yeah.
maybe not even go to college. And
Mhm.
I definitely didn't experience that. I kind of was like,
Mm.
I didn't even want to be there. But then
Yeah.
college, it's like, okay, test the waters in a way and
Yeah.
see where it goes, but it didn't
Yeah.
bother me. I mean, I didn't go down that route either, but it's so
No.
true that especially those kids those age, it could make a
Mhm.
huge impact in their life if they
Yeah.
go make the one wrong mistake.
Yeah, it really does. And like kids are so vulnerable at that age, right? At the end of the day, kids at that age, grade 6, 7, 8, when you leave elementary school, grade 6, it's all just fun. You're doing certain things and you really don't like kids don't really know who they are yet. When they
Yep.
get to grade 7 and 8, you go to high school and it's like all the local elementary schools in that district get together, and kids are going through puberty. And at the end of the day, kids just want to belong. And then all the groups separate, like the popular kids, the nerdy kids, the goth kids. And, at the end of the day, they just want to belong and probably not be alone or something like that. So they'll do whatever it takes. And, a lot of the time that involves drinking, going to parties, and just all that stuff. And I'm definitely one to do it at that time. And, there's peer pressure and everything else. So
Yeah.
you're definitely right with all that.
You talked that you're a music junkie. What was that music you grew up listening to?
So I played, I'm trying to remember what grade it was, 2005. So I was probably just in grade 7, 8, 9. I played a lot of video games. I was a massive gamer back in the day. And one in particular was World of Warcraft. And
Okay.
I played that game, for like 7 hours a day. My grades plummeted. But while I was playing that, I just listened to music in the background. I'd go to friends' houses who had older brothers who was listening to cool music. And a lot of that music was a lot of like trance music. It's just timeless music that keeps going. Other music, though, it was kind of you like Queens of the Stone Age. There was like them Crooked Vultures, just kind of rock and grooving kind of music. I got into some metal too at the time, nothing too crazy, but just some of the stuff from Europe that was going on, and which made for pretty good gym music at the same time.
You were naming all those groups. I'm like, I've never heard of these. Now I'm gonna have to go listen to it on a
Yeah.
Spotify and see what they're like. Would you
Yeah.
say that those music individuals kind of played an influence in you? Like kind of like maybe you wanted to go down a music route or anything?
I think so. Yeah. I just felt like I had an appreciation for music that a lot of people didn't sometimes. I could not stand the radio. Like I always had to turn the radio off whenever I heard like the top 40 hits. Like I remember Nickelback. I mean, their music isn't that great to begin with, but it was just like this bland sound. And compared to, I'm not to say like I'm this music contemporary, but compared to, music that has different depths to it and music that you can, like, I just found like when I would hear it, I'd really get into that. I would share it with a friend. They would just hear it as the music, but those music and the notes would actually give me emotions, and it kind of made me feel like maybe there's something to this. Like, do I have a musical taste that nobody else sees? And then I thought, well, maybe I should try an instrument. Now fast forward till today, I never did. I only played Rock Band and Guitar Hero, and that was it. But that was something that just like of all friends, biggest Spotify list, it could have been like everything from the Beatles to like Elvis, all the way to like Enya, to like trance music, to like opera, to like heavy metal. I mean, I really liked it all. And I think around the time, Justin Bieber was really popular and stuff. And it just, Justin Bieber, Drake, some of the songs I thought were great, but it just wasn't for me. So when you go to the club, in the bar and stuff, and people would be singing certain songs, like just one in ear, out the other, no idea what it was about.
You're gonna start a riot in the comment section with the whole Nickelback comment, and
Yeah.
but that's always been like, I feel like it's kind of a conversation that people, are they good, or are they not good? But I
Yeah.
think music is something that's so special because everyone has what they prefer, what they like, and you kind of learn more about that individual based on the music they do listen to, why
For
they
sure.
like a certain genre, why they like a certain artist. And they
Mhm.
say, you mentioned how the kind of the emotions, the feels that you get from a certain song. I think it's so true because you might listen to one song, I might listen to the same song, and we both could have different opinions on how we like it, do we not like it, things like that. So it's very a great way to express and kind
Mm.
of learn more about a person.
Absolutely, yeah, and you know, it's fascinating with all the different senses we have, like hearing, touch, smell, and everything. Smell, I think they say, is the biggest one that can bring you back in time to a certain memory, but
Yep.
music too, and it reminds us of certain parts of our life. I read recently as well that our music taste when we get older is formed like while our brain is forming around the age of 13, 14, 15. And I was thinking, well, that kind of makes sense because during the time I was listening to that music kind of stuck with me now. And that's sort of what I'm listening to some degree. And, you know, some are, you know, it branches out. Right. So, and the bands that I saw live back then, still like them today and who are similar to them. So it's all along those same lines. So it's interesting. I asked people like, who did you listen to when you're around that age? And sure enough, you know, they're listening to kind of similar music now, or at least they'll go back to it.
I would have to look back at my iPod to see what I was listening to at that age because I
Yeah.
can't even remember. We
Yeah.
always are asked that question, what was our dream job? What
Mhm.
was that dream job for you?
So when I was a kid, because my dad was in business, one thing that always appealed to me was like stocks and you know, the stock market. I actually saw the movie Limitless, and that was back. Forget when it came out. I think it was in high school, and the premise of that movie is you just take one pill and you just become this ultra genius. And Bradley Cooper was starring in that movie, and because of that, this whole entire world changed. His brain was operating at like 20 times the speed. He became this ultra genius. Robert De Niro was in there too, and he became like a multimillionaire. He got any girl he wanted. He was traveling the world. And like when I saw this as a kid, I was like, he was speaking any language he wanted. And when I was a kid, I was like, I want that. Like, how do we do it? So I kind of thought like, how do I make money? Well, you go where the money is, which is finance. And, you know, I kind of started getting into the stock market, and I eventually took finance at school when I went to university here. And yeah, it kind of took off. Then I went into, you know, bank related jobs, and then it kind of took a completely opposite turn, running my own businesses in more health related things.
When you were in those financial jobs, was it fun for you? Did you like enjoy waking up and going to work to do all that? Because you hear so many different stories about
Mhm.
finance jobs. It could be
Absolutely.
a mess one day, it could be so enjoyable the next day. What was
Yeah.
that like for you?
Yeah, great question. It was initially when I was in there, I thought I was a big shot. And I realized the whole time when I was in that finance job, it was just ego that was carrying me at the end of the day. The reason that I went into it wasn't the reason that I wanted to stay in it. And it was just, I mean, it just depends. Like I found just naturally numbers came good to me. But one thing I couldn't do is just repetition all the time and looking at the same Microsoft Excel, you know, spreadsheets, doing the
Mhm.
same equations, you know, every single month, every single quarter. Nothing, you know, it just kind of felt still to me. And to only get like every year, if you did a top notch job, to get like a 3 to 5 10K increase in addition to bonus, I mean, that was nice too. But just to see where that was going versus like some of my dad's friends were entrepreneurs into real estate, and they had their own schedule, they had their own freedom, and they were making so much money, paying little in taxes. That really appealed to me. And what I realized afterwards is what I'm ultimately looking for is that sense of freedom. And this took a lot of time for me to figure that out. But you know, it's having my own schedule, doing what I want on my own terms. And you know, finance can do that for you to, you know, to certain degree and point, but it just depends what you're going into. But that anyway, that just took me a while to figure out on my own.
Do you think if you didn't watch Limitless, that maybe your perception of that job would have been different? Because you kind of went in kind of wanting that lifestyle or kind of
Yeah.
what was featured in that movie and you
Uh,
went in that direction. Do you think if you didn't watch that movie but went into that job, maybe you would enjoy it or it would be a different outcome for you?
I think so. Yeah. It's kind of like the Matrix. Like you can
Yeah.
either take the blue pill or the red pill. And I think by watching that movie, I took the red pill. So I saw what was on the other side. And once you see it, you can't go back.
Yeah.
You can't just pretend it's there. So I think, you know, if it wasn't Limitless, it may have been a few other things too. But if I stuck with the blue pill and, you know, just became like a corporate 9 to 5 slave, not that there's anything wrong with that, but just my perception of it at the time, you know, I probably wouldn't have had like an idea of what was it like outside that environment. And I would have just been like, okay, this is pretty good. I may have been unhappy unconsciously, not knowing why. But, just going through the motions, and doing all that too.
During that time, did it ever take a personal effect in you? Like it kind of was so focused on the job that your personal life was different, or it
Mhm.
kind of had a impact on you as an individual?
Absolutely. So this is a really interesting turning point for me, because when I first went into finance, the hours there were just absolutely crazy, like sometimes 12 to 18-hour
Wow.
work days. And your body can only do it for so long. And at the time I was in my early 20s, and I'd recently come back from China, because I actually went to study abroad there in university for 1 year, learned Mandarin, went back the following year to work in kind of the finance district of Shanghai, which was a really cool experience. But when I came back to Canada to do that, it's just a different culture. It was just kind of like a dog eat dog mentality. Not as bad as New York would be, or like Wolf of Wall
Mhm.
Street or something, but there's elements to it. And and performance is everything. There's 5 people who are ready to take the job right behind you. So they really don't care if they lay you off or anything. And so I noticed at that time that I just became like, my mind was becoming sluggish. I was becoming forgetful. I started losing weight. I was stressed all the time, drinking like 5 coffees a day, and it wasn't doing anything for me. And long story short, I had to quit that job, and I eventually became bedridden, just feeling like a shell of my former self. So I went to the doctor to see what was happening. I probably saw like 8 to 10 specialists, and each of them said couldn't really give me any answers what was happening. And then I finally went to the gastroenterologist. They specialize kind of in the stomach and in the gut, and they diagnosed me with Crohn's disease, which is basically inflammation of the bowels. And what that causes is, your body to really put out these fires. And for some people, it can become serious. Mine was pretty moderate, and I was lucky in that way. Um, Anyway, the side effects of the medication that they were giving me made me feel actually worse. I was becoming bloated, like my cheeks were so puffy, and I just felt like I was, drunk all the time. And I never had a drink in so long. And so it was because of that I realized I felt cornered with my back against the wall. I had to take health into my own hands. And it was at this point I was spending hours upon hours each day. With I was doing a sales job, but I was really unhappy. And all I could think about at that time was about that dream of the limitless. And I
Mhm.
felt so far away from that. And that's what really made me feel unhappy. It's like, why would I be spending my time on this health when I should be over there doing it? So for me, increasing my health and going further down that route will get me back to that place. But what I realized afterwards was it was the health itself and on that journey that made me feel better than I ever had before. To fast forward till today, over the last 5 years, Crohn's has been in complete 100% remission. Doctors don't know why, but it was through, sleep primarily, but, just this rigorous research every single day. And it bought me the time to do that. And that's a lesson that'll happen for my entire life.
You Before that diagnosis, you talked about putting your body really out there and kind of the long work hours and stuff. And then you go into bedridden and you're going through this process where you're not like before working. Was it hard to be home and just not doing anything, but you know that you needed to do this because your body needed to recover?
Exactly. Yeah. It definitely didn't feel like it at the time. My mentality was, and especially coming from my dad, who was of tough love, it's like, if you're not feeling good, just suck it up and get on with it. And that's
Mhm.
primarily what I did. I was going to the gym all the time, used to the physical pain, push onwards, keep going, any mental thing, just, push it on. But eventually, you can only do so much. It's kind of like a boiling kettle just before it pops.
Yep.
And that's kind of what happened to me. And mentally, my body needed it, but mentally, I didn't realize it at the time. And the only thing it knew was to keep pushing, keep going. But when the mind wants to, but the body isn't willing, it's this huge cognitive disconnect. And that's where I had to kind of sit down with myself. And it was upon lying there, these realizations were starting to come to me, listening to other doctors, purchase, like I spent so much money on a lot of these masterminds, speaking to specialists, and they were giving me the answers. And if it wasn't for them, then figuring those answers out by myself, I probably would have been backtracking a lot.
I think a lot of people listening could relate where they're overworking themselves, kind of
Yeah.
putting too much pressure, and they're having maybe different side effects or different outcomes than maybe not Crohn's, but it's still dangerous to your body
Yeah.
because everyone needs to have that rest. Do you
Mhm.
think that if the finance jobs told you you might have to work 12 to 18 hours a day, do you think less people would go into that kind of industry? I know it's a question that it's hard to know what people would think, but if you knew that before you went into it, do you feel that you would still go in there?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like I still would have, because at the time I was just so driven and ready to do it. I don't think it hit me until I was actually inside and realizing how much resources it took from me. Like, you couldn't go home until a deal was closed, even if that meant like 2 a.m. So I think a lot of people go into it, at least at that age, with the conceived idea of like what's portrayed in the movies, like, some movies like The Big Short and some of these other pretty cool finance movies. And it's like, for any young guy who's raging with testosterone, with a big ego, it's like, hell yeah, I want that. Like, that's the pinnacle of any guy's life at that age. So I think a lot of people who go into that role, some just have a natural knack for finance and they're just built for it, and that's perfectly okay too. But I think for a lot of people who go into it initially, and why they stay in it, it's different reasons. And finance is very big too. So like investment banking, because the hours are so outrageous, at least at the time, it was like, get in, do your 1 year, 2 years, and then get out. Anything longer than that is just a detriment to your health. And that's why they hire a lot of people in their early 20s, just because they can tell them what to do, they have authority over them, and they can, work longer hours than probably anyone at any age. They have the energy to do it. So sometimes, you won't be. I've had friends who have gone into, like, fortunately, I didn't experience this, but I've had friends, to just like in a 12-hour shift to go to the gym for half an hour to an hour. Not that their work wouldn't allow it, but it was just, there was so much to do. And if you don't prioritize your health, then it's just, productivity will decrease. And some people are able to do it with everything. And I wonder, like, genetically, they're just very genetically gifted to do and be something like that. But I'd say for the average person, you definitely have to be careful. It's not only finance, it could be any kind of shift work, anything you're doing, just long and strenuous hours. You really just have to self-assess. It's self-awareness at the end of the day, to see where you're at and what environment meets your needs.
I think it's definitely hard with salary jobs where there's no overtime.
Yeah.
So you have to stay until the work is done. And I've always told myself, it can wait till tomorrow. It doesn't need to be done right then and there. After 8 hours or 9 hours, depending on the job, it's like, I'm done for the day. Like, it can wait. I can worry about it in the morning. If it's that urgent, you should have called me earlier in the day. I'm around all day. And I think it's definitely something that kids going to college and going out in the workforce that needs to be something that they think about is,
for sure,
what's this job that you're wanting? Are you willing to put in the time for longer hours and it's still rewarding? And we kind of talked about passion in a certain industry, or do you want to just do the minimum and just make that money and then move on to the next? So for someone who had Crohn's, and someone that's listening who might be going through that journey right now, what are some tips that you would tell them to help them? We're not telling them that it will work, but what's something that you have done that maybe someone could try and see if it works for them?
For sure. I think it all starts with your mindset. When your mindset's down, it's kind of Pareto's principle. You'll get 80% of the results with 20% of the work. And mindset's a big thing because it's basically the filter through which we see life. And it's kind of, it might sound a little bit woo-woo, but if you think about it, like, every single thought you have turns into an action. Those actions turn into a habit. And those habits shape who you are. And now you multiply those minor decisions you make on an hourly basis, a daily basis, over months and years. And then you can think of it as like a yacht that's going this way by 2 degrees, or a yacht that's going this way by 2 degrees. Over time, the difference between the two is massive. So I think having a positive mindset and always trying to see the positive of something is way better than, not trying at all. Because even if something's negative, for example, like what I was going through and what that pain was, I allowed that to empower me. And I remember just at the time watching a lot of, because I was down in the dumps, just mentally, because just everything that happened, everything I expected. So because of that, it was kind of like, I can either do nothing, sit in my own sadness, or I can get up, see this challenge as something to overcome. And one thing that always got me going was the hero's journey of, going through all those things. And somebody told me at the time once, it was like the perfect advice. It was the the cave you fear holds the treasure that you seek. And so I kind of knew at that point, is like, keep following that wherever that is, and eventually it will go through. And I had the advantage just because I was used to pushing through that pain. Everybody, I think, just has a different pain tolerance. And, I was probably used to becoming just numb and pushing through it and keep going, keep going, keep going. And it helped me to a degree, but until I burnt out, then, I had to sit back for a while and just see the positive of it. What can I do in this situation to baby step it and just be like 1% better today than yesterday? And as long as I was doing that, I could slowly see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Let's talk about your entrepreneurial journey. Talk about how the creation of the sleep consultant came about.
Great question. So yeah, with going back to when I was in finance, researching what was going on with me, doctors told me is the Crohn's disease. I tried all these holistic things. And so each month I would focus on a specific thing. So one month it would be like diet. Another month it might be exercise. One month would be sleep. One month would be supplements, just all these things. And when I hit the sleep month, my health just got better so fast, and like my energy was coming back online faster than all these things. The other things really did help, like diet and exercise help with better sleep. Better sleep helps with it. It's just a cyclical process. And once that kind of happened, I was going more and deeper into sleep, researching studies, seeing how it was working, spending tens of thousands of dollars with private doctors, picking their brain and everything. And sort of in the process over the years, I felt like I got a PhD indirectly. Eventually, and I got certifications in all the subject with sleep and everything else. And and then I just started helping friends because there were so many people that were just, underslept, and they didn't see, because it was a badge of honor to, put things under the rug, put sleep under the rug and push on with it. Drink 5 coffees and you'll be okay. But again, you're burning the candle from both ends. So it was helping people just locally, friends of friends, their parents. And then it kind of turned into like this lucrative thing where I'm like, wow, this could actually turn into a business. And I looked up online and they talk about something known as a blue ocean, which is if you can find an industry that's untapped, there's a blue and a red ocean that's untapped. You basically get access to those customers only. And how you find that is if you can niche and then niche and then niche, you just hyper niche. And then that industry is yours. And because people see you as a specialist, you have the authority in that niche. Because you know so much about it. And as a result, you can charge higher prices compared to a generalist. They like jack of all trades, master of none. They can help all these things, but people won't pay for that one special thing. I mean, you'll notice that with 9-to-5 jobs, a lot of specialists sometimes get paid the most, engineering, science, and a lot of these things. So it was because of that I started developing my business virtually, and then just working with clients from around the world, from Asia to Europe, South America, Africa, North America, everywhere. And what we do is we send lab test kits, directly to their house. We look at about 750 biomarkers, all their genetics, all their mind stuff, like their hormones, the same stuff that I was looking at in my body, trying to become my own guinea pig. And it was kind of through the same process that now helping other people too. It's like, well, if you can unlock this code inside of our biology to really see where some of those maybe biomarker deficiencies are, and you can address them with sort of like a sniper-like approach instead of just machine gun auto fire, just trying things, throwing stuff at the wall, hoping it works, then, that's what can really start helping people when it's a customized type of approach. And I think it was just through that, the trial and error I was doing on myself, that other people started to gravitate towards it. Then it built on my confidence at the time, because when I saw the results they were able to achieve, it's like, well, why couldn't it work on this person, and that person?
For someone that's just researching, trying to find you, they might find that you're not a doctor, but you've gone through this experience where you've gone through Crohn's and sleep has helped you, and you found a formula that kind of has worked for you. And you have all these people that have tried it and tested it. Do you think that individual learning about your story and how sleep played a big part in your kind of journey helps them wanting to try and learn more about their sleeps kind of cycle and stuff?
Absolutely. Yeah. The thing is, like, anybody can find any information online,
Yes.
on Google, really anything. And so it's like, what separates you from the other guy who can just look at something like Google? Like, are you just like, for anybody who's trying to give information out, like, somebody could just read a blog, they can go, go somewhere. So what separates things is stories. And through stories, we're human beings at the end of the day. We're emotional creatures. And because of that, when somebody hears your story, the pain you went through, it becomes a lot more relatable, and they build a lot more trust. Because I mean, the truth is, online, there's a lot of shady stuff that goes on,
Yeah.
people getting scammed. So I think trust now more than ever, especially now because so many people are claiming to be a coach of some kind, like a breakup coach, anxiety coach, and they have no experience in it. They just read a book maybe and they decided to do it, which isn't bad. Like, I encourage anyone to become an entrepreneur that way, but you just really have to assess if you're looking for a quality person, understanding their story, where did it come from. But you still want them to have the knowledge to back it up. You want them to see that they care about your results as a person, not just about the money. It's really all factored approach. So I think because of that, people trust me. I really don't try to push things on anybody. I really just try to express what this is. And because of that, I take other people's results pretty personally, because I was personally impacted by it. And I remember at the time thinking, like, I never want anybody, like even my worst enemy, to feel like this. So that's where it sort of changes things. And that's why, looking back, I think it was a blessing in disguise.
I think I've gone through that, where if the person's gone through something similar or what I'm looking for, I think I take that in a lot more, but then I also have to make sure they can back it up with information, stuff like that. But I think it's so true, because you don't want a person that's going, and I think for my story, I'm a type 1 diabetic. That person's trying to give me diabetic advice and they don't have it. It's harder for me. If they're not a doctor, if they're just a regular individual, I'm not going to listen to them, because they don't know what I've been experiencing. So I think for you, that definitely helps, because you've gone through it and you kind of learned from it, and your mission is to help others. You're not doing it for the financial aspect of it. Your mission is the value in that person. During this time with the pandemic, has it been harder for your business, or have you been able to be creative and come up with new strategies during these times?
Yeah, great question. So two of my main businesses I have now. So one's, the sleep consulting, working one-on-one. I have a video group-based program. That's one. And the other one is where I do copywriting. Copywriting is basically writing to sell a product, writing to sell a service. So anytime you go to a website, you see some writing. In the background, there's some psychology going on, tapping into your emotional brain. There's an actual equation to it. It's both an art and a science, but it's really fascinating too. But I do that with biotech companies. So both of those jobs I can do virtually, no matter where I am in the world. So that part's been extremely nice. It was kind of just before the pandemic, I was still working in finance, more of a part-time basis, because I still didn't want to let that go in some way. And then when the pandemic came, I was like, okay, I'm going full force into it. Now with the sleep, I think people realized with the pandemic going on that, health was pretty important. And so and people were just underslept. They were stressed, like financially, their jobs, they didn't know what was going on. So it was pretty good with me. I think people were just naturally reaching out more to me because they were just underslept. And a lot of the time, people don't reach out for something until the pain is so severe that they'll do so. And when it comes to sleep, if somebody thinks, my sleep is okay, and they don't really understand it, like, I'll just drink a coffee and get on with it. The pain point's not there for them to want to take action. But at the time, it was just this lingering issue that a lot of people had. And I think that's why they reached out, because relationships were being affected. They couldn't focus as much as they wanted to. They were feeling anxiety, depression, and, it just went on and on. So I think a lot of people realize if they focus on themselves first and then the external environment second, that's a better way to live life.
Do you like having two different companies in two different industries? It kind of helps you spark ideas that if you do in one, how can I incorporate into the other, or vice versa?
Yeah, totally. It totally does. My brain is, I think, built to be an entrepreneur, to be honest, just from a young age. And because of that, I mean, there's good and bad to that. I mean, the bad is I'm always thinking of new ideas when really I just have to stick to one thing and do that thing. So it's really nice between the two, because, if I'm doing the sleep and I feel like, getting more into the writing, or if I do the writing and I get sick of that, I can go to the sleep. So I can go back and forth between the two. What's really cool though, with the writing, specifically with the clients I work with in biotech, biotech is such a cool area, and the future is going to be biotech. Biotech is like new innovations within genetics, healthcare. You can think of some stuff that Elon Musk did, like Neuralink, like tapping into our brain, just solutions to our problems that a lot of millionaires and billionaires are investing in, just the future of society. And so because of that, I kind of see the cutting edge of like new lab testing that's coming out, and just all these different things we can look at, of like, how far can we push our bodies? People say that we live let's say 100, but why can't we live to 120, 150? And they're kind of at the forefront of like unlocking this age code so we can do so. And it's just so fascinating. So I can tap back into sleep now and just kind of compare that. So it's all kind of along that same scientific realm of the people that I speak with. And I feel very fortunate that way to speak with a lot of pretty cool individuals.
Early in the interview, I talked about your personal life during your finance job. Now, with as an entrepreneur and kind of a different, and you create your own schedule, how has that been for you? Have you been able to separate both and still enjoy both aspects?
Absolutely, I have been able to. So both between each business and also between my work and personal life, I think how you run your personal life is also how you'll run your business. I think you can't have, for example, like a poor diet, poor exercise, and expect to run like an almighty business. It just doesn't happen. You need to be thinking and focusing on all cylinders every single day,
Yep.
and you really can't stop. I mean, you just have to keep going, and you have to have this internal locus of control. And always, each morning, I remember in the early journey when I was waking up, I was like, I really don't feel like doing this today. I have a 10, 12-hour day ahead of me. How am I ever going to do this? And then fast forward to the end of the day, you would finish. You're like, wow, that wasn't bad. Wake up the next day, the same thing. And you keep pushing and your brain slowly rewires, to just achieve these kind of goals. But at the same time, I had to do deep relaxation, like deep active recovery instead of just passive recovery. So the hours that I did have to relax, it would be like doing a yoga session, going to the gym, stretching, forms of meditation, just all these things to balance it out. And I noticed such a profound effect when I went back to the work. And then between the sleep and between the biotech copy, it was really good. Like I was able to separate the two as well. I did hire some virtual assistants, just to help with monotonous things. Usually the owner of a business should be focusing on more of the creativity elements of it and more of the monotonous tasks. Getting a virtual assistant for it can just help immensely with your time.
Looking at your journey, is there anything that you would change, or do you feel that each step you have taken, you've learned so much about yourself and you needed those spots to kind of get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's a mix between the two. Looking back, I would say I probably wouldn't stress out so much and enjoy the journey more. Because I mean, if I'm doing the action anyway, why should I be hard on myself? Like if I'm giving it my best and giving it my all,
Mhm.
why should I beat myself up that I wasn't trying hard or I should have worked 3 hours more? But hindsight's always 2020. And when you look back, I mean, in the moment, you're just absolutely wiped, absolutely exhausted. And like you couldn't stay awake for 3 hours more. I'd go to bed earlier. So the next morning I would have more energy and it would just trickle into that. So yeah, it's a really good question. I think to just enjoy the journey more, but I try not to have any regrets. One thing with me, I was thinking like, if only I didn't have the Crohn's and I didn't have to go through this, I'd be so much further ahead. But the truth is, like everything is sort of a blessing in disguise. We learn more about ourselves with these things that we have versus somebody else. I mean, if you just take the perfect individual, perfect health their whole life,
Yeah.
like going through everything. The one downside to that sometimes is anytime they experience adversity or any negative thing, they don't deal with it as well as somebody who has had to go through that struggle. And in order to grow, sometimes you do have to go through some struggle. Like I had some friends that were, they're part of a wealthy family, and they had everything given to them from a super young age, and some of them were only children. But anytime I was around them and they've experienced just some kind of hiccup that I or somebody else who's experienced struggle might say like, oh, it's not a big deal, they would just absolutely freak out and blow up. And that's kind of what I thought life was all about, was kind of learning and growing from those experiences. But you see it a lot with like celebrity kid actors. They get into drugs and all those kind of things. So it's definitely a fine line. What we see on Instagram and social media is not always what it's meant to be behind the scenes.
I think when I watch these shows where these parents or the families live these lavish lifestyles, and then you see how these kids react when they have
Yeah.
to do a chore in their house
Oh yeah.
because they've grown up where they've had people do it for them. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I had to do them when I grew up, but I think learning and growing and being able to adapt and learn in situations helps me so much. And that
Mhm.
I think I would prefer the lifestyle that I had than
Mhm.
something where I don't have to worry about anything. I come from that wealthy family because I think it's made me who I am today. And I
Awesome.
take those things for granted,
Mhm.
where if I have to clean my house, I'm going to do it because
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm living how I want to live. So I definitely
Mhm.
can agree with that, that those
Mhm.
challenges that I face, I'm happy that it's who I
Yeah.
am today. It's not
Yeah.
my identity, but it has given me identity skills that
Yeah.
people look at me and they're like, wow, you have this or this. And they're like,
Yeah.
how did you? And then you
Yeah.
learn even more about that person, or they learn more about me in those
Yeah.
situations.
Yeah, it's really interesting how it all works. I would say as long as that struggle isn't so bad that you experience trauma from that in
Yep.
some way where it actually hinders you and gives you like this PTSD like effect. Like cuz that can happen too with some people where they just push the needle too far. But if you're constantly pushing into your edge each and every day and any adversity that comes your way, or if at least your expectation is to expect that adversity to come and not be like,
Mhm.
oh, whenever it comes, I want to run away from it. That mindset shift alone can really change things in the right direction. And again, it's all the 1%, right? Like I said, it's going like each day and then you multiply that. There's the book Atomic Habits, really cool book, highly recommend it. It's all about like building habits into your schedule and sticking to it in the most effortless way. And he talks about if you just increase 1% per day for the entire year, you're by the end of the year, you're like 38 times better than you were at the beginning of the year, which is crazy. I mean, just to think that you can grow, which is exponential, by the way,
Yeah.
you can grow at that rate. So, I mean, it's just not to be like a rah kind of guy, but it's like you can accomplish so much by just going into this. And I'm a very, I mean, just being in finance, I'm very practical, and I'm always one to question these things at first, but just doing it myself, seeing it firsthand, seeing other people do it and them experiencing it firsthand, I mean, I can really testify to that.
So, what does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish both personally and professionally in the next few years?
That's a really good question. I've kind of, at this point, I'm just enjoying everything so much that I'm really just taking it day by day and living in the moment. Because again, I'm trying not, this is another lesson I started to learn where I'm not trying to look too far ahead or look back. It's just everything's going in the right direction. I'm putting in the hours. Why not just enjoy life while I can? But I mean, I can't just, live in the moment and just, you know, not think about the future. So one thing I think about the future, 5-10 years from now, I would love to help people like a number of value in the next 5-10 years. If I could help like 1 million people with their sleep, if I can talk to a bunch of people and help them with their sleep. A lot of people have like they know about diet, they know about exercise, personal trainers, nutritionists, but sleep is kind of that one remaining that we're all doing it anyway. So why
Mhm.
don't we? And it's just easier to do. I mean, all it takes sometimes is a few tweaks for you to do it compared to exercise, like going to the gym for 2 hours for somebody who's never worked out before. That's very difficult.
Yeah.
Or like 3 teaspoons, 5 cups of this for diet and stuff. It's just hard to stick on. But sleep can just be so simple and can increase our metabolism and all of our hormones, make us lose weight even while we sleep, and just injuries and just all these other things that goes on and on. It's pretty amazing stuff.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Really good question. So I would say self-awareness is one of the biggest things. And on my own podcast, I asked sort of similar questions and people who've been in like specific, fields for a really long time. And that's kind of the common thing I see is people who are very extremely self-aware. And how do you become self-aware? Well, one is journaling. And journaling is probably one that I see every single person make. Journaling seems like you're right about your feelings, like who would do that? And I was the first person to think about something like that too. But it could be as simple as just like, what are you thinking about right now and doing a brain dump? Because if you don't do a brain dump, your mind is going to be constantly thinking. Like I think on average, we get about 66,000 thoughts a day. And so
Wow.
if we have no organization with those thoughts, how are we going to expect to really get anything done? Like at the end of the day, we have these very primal monkey minds that run in emotions, a reptilian brain. Yeah, we do have this prefrontal cortex that's controlled, but we're actually a lot stupider than we think. A lot of us don't want to admit it. So we really need these tools to organize things in a certain way So journaling is a really good one, like to-do list, obviously. But if you can just write down prior to going to bed, 90 minutes before going to bed, what did you accomplish today? Like, what do you want to do tomorrow? What are penny things lingering on your mind? It could be anything negative, anything positive. And what that'll actually do is a little fun side tip is it will be less of a load for your brain to carry while it sleeps. And so you probably will be less likely to wake up in the middle of the night because your brain can sleep through it opposed to having some kind of a nightmare and waking up from all that. So I would say that's number one. Number two, meditation is extremely important for us to focus and allow. And again, meditation, people don't know how to necessarily do that. All it takes usually is about 20 minutes. You can do something, for example, like Muse is a guided meditation. It's a tool you can use. That's a headband. You can, on YouTube, there's a channel called The Honest Guys. They're a great resource for guided meditation. But eventually, if you can just open or close your eyes, focus on your breath for 20 minutes, and anytime you notice that thought slide back on the breath, and it's just this constant reinforcement, back on the breath, back on the breath. And what that does to your body on a hormone level, I mean, the science is in, the benefits are there. This stuff obviously works, but a lot of people don't realize that until they do it themselves and experience the difference. I mean, they show it changes your brain, your gray matter inside of your brain, the synapses, how fast it fires. All it takes is 8 weeks if you're doing that. And 8 weeks goes by a lot faster than you think. So that would be number two. Number three, I would say, is getting more in touch with your, a lot of us are cut off from our body. We kind of look at our body as this secondary vehicle to transport our mind and our brain to, from point A to B. And if we can get more into our body, it'll actually take us less out of our mind. And with that, we're able to get more done. We can feel more grounded, more centered. And because of that, we can make better decision-making and all the other things that come with that. So I would say those three are sort of the biggest. I mean, I could go on and on about diet, exercise, and all these other things if they want to rise to the challenge. But just know, if you focus on the internal first with whatever obstacle you're going to experience, and you live a more effortless, like if your reality is more effortless and you're able to get more done without having to push, instead of forcing something, you have just this innate power in order to do so. Just because your stress is on point, hormones on point, all these other things are on point. Like people can probably remember to a point where they just felt like they're 100% best self. No, negative thoughts. They could do anything at any time. Imagine being able to experience that like during most of the time of your waking hours. And the truth is, it is possible. You just have to, slowly work on this, and don't go from 0 to 100. Just do baby steps, 1% each day. Because at the end of the day, it is all relative. As long as you feel 2%, 5% better, that can be significantly different for you. So always just, go into the edge, focus on the internal first, focus on your health first, instead of what a lot of people say I speak with is putting lipstick on a pig. And for example, just drinking coffee and putting bandages on a deeper issue that's going on. Focus on actually getting to the root cause of what that is. And then from there, you can, it's like a leaking bucket. You can't just put cups underneath as it continues to leak. You actually have to seal up the holes that are inside, and then it'll stop leaking. So if you take that approach to any obstacle that you have, I think you'll definitely be in the right place.
Well, Riley, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thank you so much, Alex. I really appreciated time talking with you today and having me on. And all the best.